The Rangers snapped a season-long losing streak against the Guardians, and they stayed above 500. But the most important thing about Wednesday's win over the Guardians might be that Corey Seager is finally back. We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into the Rangers finding their home run swing, again, Corey Seager looking back, Jon Gray's importance, and of course, more injury updates. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, the Rangers snapped a 5-game losing streak. They had gone all the way down to 500 at 22-22, and they were in danger of having a losing record for the first time under manager Bruce Bochy. The Rangers had some rough stretches last year. They got out to a hot start, but they had some rough stretches, but they never really sniffed around 500 once they went off to that hot start in April and more specifically in May. And the Rangers were going to have a winning record. It felt pretty obvious there. But this year, some things were hanging in the balance. The amount of injuries is incomprehensible and overwhelming, and it feels like every day there's a new one, which, by the way, there is a new one. Thankfully not at the major league level, but there have been some injury developments in the last 24 hours since I recorded a podcast. But the Rangers have still done their best to stay afloat, stay in the division race, stay, within arm's reach of the wild card chase, and wait for those injuries to subside. But after getting swept in Colorado by the Rockies, who had been horrible to start the year. Now, by the way, in case you want to feel a little bit better about yourself, the Rangers were in the midst of what is now a 7-game winning streak for the Rockies, who hadn't won consecutive games heading into the series against the Rangers and hadn't even won a series all year. They finished off a back-to-back sweeps, one against the Rangers, one against the Padres. But now this Rangers team was in a rough way. They had had 2 bad games against the Guardians, and their offense that was looking amazing in Kansas City and at times in Oakland just looked dried up. The home run ball looked dried up. The hitting with runners in scoring position looked dried up. And this was just not a team that was hitting the ball well over the last week or so. But the home run bats came back in the Tuesday game against the Guardians, where Jack Leiter kind of put this team in a real tough hole. The bullpen held up enough, but there were some signs of life. 3 home runs, granted all solo home runs. The Rangers made it close, but they were not able to get the win on Tuesday. But those home run bats were back on Wednesday. A couple of home runs were the entirety of the Rangers scoring in this one. 2-run homers by Marcus Semien and by Adolis Garcia, who is now homered in 2 straight games. The Rangers offense had done a great job of hitting with runners in scoring position, with 2 outs in the clutch. They had done well, but when you're relying on a bunch of singles with runners in scoring position, sometimes you don't get those opportunities. Sometimes you're facing a great pitcher, and you only have so many chances to take advantage. And even teams that are hitting great with runners in scoring position, have an on-base of 400 and are hitting 300, you're still getting outs 60% of the time. So sometimes those extra base hits, those long balls, you need some of those. And the Rangers got them in this one. The 10th home run of the year by Adolis Garcia. Marcus Semien has 8. They also got a triple from Leody Taveras. A great hit by Leody Taveras, who is somehow not revered as a decent player. By the way, that hit that he had, it extended his on-base streak to now 18 games, and the triple was the first hit Carlos Carrasco has allowed on his curveball all season long. Carrasco's been mostly solid for the Guardians this year. Not amazing, but they've had a lot of injuries. They've needed to use him. But again, Another example of Leo Taveras being a helpful hitter. And when he gets on base and when he gets in a scoring position for Marcus Semien, more times than not, will come up in those big situations. He got a pitch that he could handle, a fastball that was supposed to be away, but came in. Marcus Semien hit it just enough to be a home run, just over the outstretched glove of the left fielder, Florial, who it looked like he was about to catch it. I wasn't quite sure if he came down with it or not, but seeing him once he got to the ground looking frustrated, you thought, okay, all right, that one's gone. And then Adolis Garcia, who gets his home runs in bunches, getting yet another home run in this one. The Rangers win 4-0. They had some other chances, including in the fourth inning where the Rangers had the bases loaded with one out and what should have been 0 outs because of a less than generous strike zone for Nathan Eovaldi. A frustrating plate appearance for him. He ends up with a 3-strikeout day, but did reach base on a walk before that Adolis Garcia home run to make it a 2-run shot. But it was a frustrating at-bat for Nathan Eovaldi in the fourth inning, which could have made this game look a little bit different. The Rangers could have blown it open a little bit more, but it got to a 3-0 count, then got a generous strike called against him on low and outside corner, which I didn't think was a strike, but whatever. There's a ball a little bit further away outside that he had a less than generous check swing call against him. Probably didn't check his swing. Strike 2. And then a pitch low and in, which was below the zone and also probably a little bit in. It just barely touched the strike zone, but hadn't been called a strike all day. That one ends up being strike 3, and Nathaniel Lowe was rightly heated. Then the Rangers went on to rally, and that rally ended in a Jonah Heim ground into a double play on a ball that was pretty well struck, but Josh Naylor made a great play on it, got the ball, tagged first base, and threw the ball home. The Rangers didn't get anything. They also had another bases-loaded rally that went for nothing. Marcus Semien hit a ball to the left fielder that he ended up catching, this time not result in a grand slam, but the Rangers offense did enough. They weren't great with runners in scoring position in this one, but it didn't really matter. Just 2 for 8. One of those 2 was a 2-run homer, so that ends up being very helpful. But Corey Seager is looking like himself with some incredibly hard hit balls in this game, including the hardest hit ball of the day, hardest hit ball of his season at 113.3 miles an hour. Expected batting average of 750, but of course, it ends up being a line out. Actually, the 4 hardest hit balls of the day were all outs. 109.3 mile an hour ground out from Josh Naylor, 109.2 mile an hour line out from Adolis Garcia, and 109.1 mile an hour ground out from Gabriel Arias. The hardest hit ball that was actually hit was Corey Seager's 108 mile an hour single. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you that once again, Corey Seager is hitting the ball incredibly hard. He had that 109 mile an hour just laser beam of a home run the other day, and Corey Seager just keeps hitting balls hard. His expected numbers are way better than his actual numbers, which means that eventually some balls are going to start finding some gaps. Some balls are going to start flying over fences. Some balls are going to end up dropping in that haven't so far. His walk rate has been better than just about any season in his career, at least any season in his Rangers career so far. He is walking at 10.5%. He is striking out at 17%. He has been very, very good. And now he is finally, it looks like, fully healthy. The defense, by the way, has also been pretty good this year for Corey Seager. Just kind of under the radar. His outs above average are in the top 16% of all of baseball, which is not something I think we've seen in Corey Seager's tenure with the Rangers. He has the capability to be at least a solid average defensive shortstop. He's also, one of the best hitters in the freaking world. And if he's doing that while playing an above average shortstop, I mean, that just should propel him even further. He's going to have to get his numbers way up, and it's going to take a lot of work to get those numbers up to where we expect them from Corey Seager to get him in an MVP conversation. But we all know he has the talent. We all know he is good enough to be in that MVP conversation because he just was literally last year, and he won a kind of MVP that means just a little bit more than a regular season and a World Series MVP. Oh, and by the way, that was the second time he's done it. I think he wants number 3 this year, but it's great signs from this offense to see them hitting in multiple ways, scoring runs in multiple ways. The one way that they hadn't really done it is the long ball, and so seeing them start to heat up from that perspective, seeing Corey Seager start to heat up, which is just going to be huge for this team. Hopefully Evan Carter gets back this weekend. It seems like Friday is when he is expected to possibly be back in the lineup. He is not going to have to go on the IL. That is good news for the Rangers. Also seeing Adolis Garcia break out of that 2-week slump that was just something quite horrendous with those home run balls. Also, I think the offense is aided a little bit by the open roof with those home runs on Tuesday's game. I think we should maybe see the roof open a little bit more to hopefully increase that home run potential by this team. I don't know, something the Rangers should probably look into. Maybe already have, and maybe that's why they're making these decisions to help out the pitching, which, by the way, has been spectacular. Jon Gray has been spectacular. We're going to talk about that and an update on Max Scherzer and the several injured Rangers right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events, it's tough nowadays. It is really tough and really frustrating. But Game Time is here to take the hassle out of buying tickets and make it easy, simple, and give you the best deal they can possibly give you. Last minute tickets are the easiest way to get these deals. They've got all kinds of great tickets. If you're a spontaneous kind of person, you can save up to 60% off buying tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They've also got things like flash deals. You can save more with exclusive in-app deals or select seats ahead for any game of event. They've also got the all-in pricing. Some of these apps will, they won't tell you actually how much it's going to cost, but with Game Time, they've got all-in pricing that will tell you exactly how much it's going to cost before you buy. No surprise fees at checkout, which is what I absolutely love. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% the difference. So, download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, I talked a little bit about this earlier on in the week when the data became available, but StatCast has unveiled some bat tracking data, and I talked a little bit about why it's important and some things that I gleaned early just skimming through the leaderboards. I want to look at one thing, especially in particular with Corey Seager, that I found interesting and might actually be helpful, even if you're not super into all of this StatCast stuff. So one of the things that they track that I found really interesting is the swing length. You hear a lot about people talking about shortening up with 2 strikes, or this guy is very quick to the ball, or what have you. And what's interesting about that is usually those are the guys who aren't hitting for a lot of power. If you got a short swing, usually it's guys who are shorter. They are able to make faster decisions. They're able to get on pitches inside, and usually they will struggle a little bit more with pitches away. And they're usually guys who aren't hitting for the most power. Think of guys like, Marcus Semien has been pretty short to the ball. He doesn't have the most raw power, doesn't have the most bat speed, but if you throw him a fastball inside, he is going to turn on it because he's got those quick hands, and anything inside he can really get to. And you look at his pull chart for where his home runs are, almost all of them are to left field. We kind of saw that with that home run that he hit on Wednesday's game. But Corey Seager is a guy who has a really, really short swing. And he's also a guy who has got really great bat speed. He has got the 9th shortest swing in all of Major League Baseball, but his average bat speed is above average, above the Major League average. So what that tells you, those are usually the best kinds of hitters, the ones that are short to the ball, but can also impact the baseball very hard. It means you're able to get to any kinds of pitches. He's able to turn on high fastballs like he did with that Paul Sewald one that we all remember so very fondly. He's able to get to pitches inside. He's also able to adjust. He's got more time to make a decision on when to swing. So he's able to see that ball, recognize it, have that just little bit of extra time, which makes him so freaking good. It's why he hit every single type of pitch incredibly well last year, all kinds of different types of pitchers, lefties, righties, hard tossers, soft tossers, anywhere in the zone. Corey Seager had that extra time to make that decision, and he's got the bat speed and the short swing to do it. Another guy who is like that on the Rangers, who hasn't had as much success this year so far, is Wyatt Langford. He has got the 17th shortest swing in all of Major League Baseball, and his bat speed is well above average. Of these guys who are in the top, 40 of top 40 of shortest swings. He has got the second highest bat speed of any of them. The next one is, the only one ahead of him is Colton Cowser, who has been doing some incredible things for the Orioles this year. So what does that tell you? It tells you that he is able to have a similar style of approach as Corey Seager. Not quite the same, a little bit more patient, but he is able to have that extra half second. He's got incredible pitch recognition, and because his swing is so short, he can take that extra half second to recognize the pitch and if he wants to swing or not, and then he can do damage on those pitches. So even though Wyatt Langford hasn't had a whole lot of success so far offensively, numbers like this kind of show you why people are so high on him, why he could be so good, and why I think he absolutely will be such an incredibly good hitter. Now let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, a injury update, because there is always an injury update to happen. Now, Max Scherzer is placed on the 60-day IL. That is not starting today. Doesn't mean he's going to be out for 60 more days. It is retroactive to the start of the season, which means that he is not eligible to return until May 27th, which I think we all kind of knew at this point. It's not really that big of a new indication for Max Scherzer. They were hopeful that he'd be able to return before May 27th, and if everything had gone to plan, there hadn't been this nerve issue and this thumb issue, then he probably would already be on the hill. We might have had one fewer Jack Leiter start, but alas, that's not where we are. The Rangers made this move so they could add somebody onto their big league roster to help pitch, because the Rangers bullpen was incredibly taxed this week with the short start by Jack Leiter. They added Sean Anderson, who has been pretty solid. You might not know anything about Sean Anderson, and it's probably fair. I mean, even some of the most, hardcore Rangers fans, I saw saying, like, who the heck is Sean Anderson? Well, he was a guy who the Rangers signed this year, who has been in AAA and has been very solid in AAA. He's got an interesting repertoire in that he uses his slider a whole bunch. His most recent start, or at least a recent start, I believe it was on May 5th, he threw 60 sliders, 13 curveballs, 9 changeups, and 7 four-seam fastballs. So of his 89 pitches, he threw breaking balls 73 of those pitches. By the way, what were his results? They were pretty darn good. 7 innings, 1 earned run, 0 walks, and 10 strikeouts. I don't think he's going to make any starts. He was a guy who I considered I thought the Rangers might consider starting this year. He's had major league he's had major league appearances in the past. Success, he had one pretty decent season with the Giants back in 2020. 18 games there, a 3.5 ERA in just 15 innings of work, but still had a really bad walk problem that year. His last major league appearance was with Toronto. He had 1 appearance, 1 inning, a couple of earned runs back in 2022. He has pitched in all kinds of different places since then, and heck, even in his entire career, he has pitched in a lot of different places, including the Dominican Winter League from 2022 to 23. He also pitched in the KBO in 2023 after a not great year in AAA Lehigh Valley with Philadelphia. He even pitched this year in the Mexican Independent League, where he had 1 appearance, 1 start, 7 innings of shutout ball, and the Rangers said, okay, let's go get him. And so far in Round, he's got a 2.5 ERA in 4 starts, 21 and a third innings, has not had the walk problems, has not allowed that many home runs, has struck out a decent number. I think he could help this pen with that nasty slider, and so this move makes sense. Also, a little bit of an update on Max Scherzer. He was throwing a little bit this week. We'll see when he actually ends up coming back. He got some Botox injections, which have helped with thoracic outlet injuries, thoracic outlet syndrome, which, by the way, that's what Cody Bradford had when he was drafted out of Baylor. It caused him to miss that entire year. It's been pretty helpful for Max Scherzer. We won't know very much until a little bit later on this week, but it is something that is a very serious thing. I mean, nerve issues are no joke. That could be something that affects him the rest of his life. Really want him to be fully 110% himself, not only for him to be the best pitcher that he can be, but also for the rest of his quality of life. You don't want that to be impacted by trying to rush back too soon from injury. So get well soon, Max Scherzer. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a months long setback, but at this point we don't really know exactly what's happening. But there was one injury that did pop up that we were not expecting. It was not on the Major League roster, but was on the 40-man roster. That was the guy who I thought might be coming up instead of Sean Anderson, Antoine Kelly. He was pulled last night after 6 pitches. His velocity was way, way down. The last pitch that he threw was an 89.4 mile an hour slider that broke the wrong way and was not a slider, even though StatCast ruled it a slider. He stayed and hung around in the game post game for high fives, according to Scott Lucas of the Newberg Report. But he just did not look right. We'll see what's the deal with that, how hurt he is. Just another option the Rangers could have had for some bullpen reinforcement that they can't now. Mark Church, who is the only other 40-man guy on the 40-man who is not on the active Major League roster, who's a pitcher, he is also hurt. So, it seems like it's going to be this until the Rangers get their Major League rotation reinforcements back, or whenever Josh Sborz gets back. It's just an absolute mess. But you know who's not a mess, who's carrying this team while the pitching staff is so incredibly hurt? That's Jon Gray. We're going to talk about how amazing he's been and some hope for the bullpen bouncing back after a rough couple of days, right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Both the Mavs and the Stars are up 3-2 in their respective series. If you think they're going to go all the way, you can check out their odds on FanDuel. Or if you think the Rangers are going to go to town on the Angels this weekend, like I'm hoping they are, maybe you're feeling pretty bullish on maybe even an Adolis Garcia MVP or another Rangers World Series. Go check out those odds. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, I have been a big supporter of the Gray Wolf, Jon Gray, since the Rangers signed him. He was a guy who I was really excited for the Rangers to sign in that offseason before 2022. And, it was a mixed bag for him his first year. Last year, he was consistent, if not, at times spectacular. He had that 9-inning, 1-run complete game, 1-0 loss against the Cardinals in June. That was an incredible month for him. He's had stretches in all of his years with the Rangers, and every single year with the Rangers, he's had a stretch where he has just looked fantastic. This is now year 3 with the Rangers, and so far, the Rangers have needed him the most this year, more than they've needed him in any other year, with the incredible amount of injuries that they sustained to their rotation. 6-man rotation on the IL. Jon Gray has said, you know what? It's my time. This is the time for Jon Gray to step up. There's been the May of Gray. There's been the June of John. I mean, in the first year, in June and July, he was spectacular. He had 11 starts combined in those months. He had an ERA under 250 in the month of June, and an ERA below 3 in the month of July that year. And that was the only months where he had an ERA below 4.5. But it kept the Rangers afloat, kept the Rangers, from going too far into guys in like Double-A at that point. The Rangers were still a bad team at that point, but his contributions were important that year. Now, in 2023, we had the May of Gray, where he was fantastic in that month. 5 starts for him that month, a sub-2 ERA, 32 2/3 innings. He was focusing a little bit more on not getting as many strikeouts and not walking as many guys, and it led to some pretty good results in him pitching deeper into games, and that was incredibly helpful for the Rangers. And right now, with this bullpen being a little taxed the last couple of days, and with this rotation having a bazillion guys that have been on the IL, Jon Gray has stepped up in a huge, huge way. The first start of the year was a rough one, no doubt, against the Cubs. He got roughed up for 5 earned runs in under 4 innings. Then he didn't make it 4 innings in his next start against Houston. His 2 runs were unearned, but there was not a lot of confidence in Jon Gray at that point. Well, since then, he has been nothing short of phenomenal. He had 8 innings of 1-run ball against the Nationals on the 30th. He had 7 innings with just 2 runs against Kansas City that he followed that up with on May 5th. That was that game where the Rangers came back way late in it, and he should have been credited with the win, even though he wasn't. But this offense just came to life exactly when it needed to. Then in Colorado, he did everything he could to get the Rangers a win of 6 innings, 1 run. Rangers couldn't step up there. And then 6 1/3 innings of shutout ball from him in this one. I thought he maybe could have finished off that 7th inning, but the Rangers said, no, we've got enough guys rested in the pen. We're going to go Leclerc. We're going to go with Robertson. Then we're going to go with Yates, even though we've got a 4-run lead. And it ended up being enough to get the win. But Jon Gray stepping up, a 1.24 ERA in the month of April, which takes out that stinker against Chicago. And then so far this month, 3 starts, 19 1/3 innings, a 1.40 ERA in May. 1.40. Jon Gray, ace at this point. He just is an ace at this point. The highest WAR for any Rangers pitcher this season. He has finally surpassed Nate Eovaldi, a 1.5 ERA, the 3rd highest Baseball Reference WAR of anybody on this team. So far, he's been in 10 games. 9 of those were starts. One of those was that emergency appearance out of the bullpen where he just made the Braves look absolutely silly. He's got a 2.08 ERA on the season. 2.08 on the season, which, by the way, is the 6th best in all of Major League Baseball. Behind guys like Tariq Skubal, Seth Lugo, of course. Those are the only other guys in the American League who have a lower ERA than him. There's also Shota Imanaga, who's got a sub-1 ERA at this point, which is kind of crazy. Suarez with Philadelphia, and Javier Assad with the Cubs. So, like everyone expected. But Jon Gray stepping up, not only giving length to this rotation that needs it, having all these different spot starters and guys who aren't ready for the major leagues, and Jack Leiter making starts, and guys who you didn't expect to be in rotation, and Jose Urena, who has done well. But Jon Gray, when Nate Eovaldi went down, Cody Bradford went down, the 2 guys who were absolutely crushing it to start the season, I kind of looked at Jon Gray and said, okay, you're going to have to step up. Same with Andrew Heaney, and both of them have to this point. To the point where the Rangers, they're still above 500. They're a game and a half out of the AL West, and they're, I believe, a couple of games, no more than 3 games out of that final wildcard spot. And here we are, more than halfway through May. This team, again, still has a winning record, still hasn't had a losing record under Bruce Bochy at all, and a large part of that deserves to be credited to Jon Gray stepping up in such a big way. The offense has been inconsistent. The bullpen at the back end has been pretty good. The B side, not as much. There's been a bazillion injuries to the starters, and Jon Gray has just gone out there every 5th day, done his dang job, kept this team in games, and has given his team a chance to win pretty much every time he goes out there. And since those rough starts from Andrew Heaney early on, Heaney has also done the same thing. And I think both those guys deserve a lot of credit. They got a lot of scoring. And even for me, I was really quick to say, all right, let's get these guys healthy so we can shove Jon Gray and Andrew Heaney in the bullpen. And so far, they have been massive for this Rangers team. You can't deny it. As has the impact of Kirby Yates and David Robertson. Both of them have been massive as well. But Jon Gray, the underrated hero, and he might be getting a little bit lucky. His expected ERA is significantly higher than his actual ERA. His actual ERA is 2.08 on the season. His expected ERA is at 3.70, which is around middle of the pack. But Jon Gray has made one key change this year that has, I think, led to this impact. He's outpitched his expected ERA before, so this is not some this is just some guy who we've never heard of who's just having a heater on his life. Gray was a guy who was a 3rd pick overall out of the draft by Colorado and has had some really good seasons. Hasn't been an all-star yet, but if he pitches like this for another month or 6 weeks, he's going to be an all-star because he's been that good. But the change that Jon Gray has made is one that I feel like a lot of people have been clamoring for, that I was clamoring for, that I think the Rangers finally said, okay, this is something that you fully need to embrace. And the change has been that he's thrown his slider the most of all of his pitches. The 4-seamer last year was not great. It was a pitch that was hit hard, did not have a high run value, actually had a terrible run value. -20 run value on his four-seam fastball last year. But the slider was at positive 16, which means plus 16 on a run value on a pitch. It makes it one of the better pitches in baseball. And minus 20 makes it one of the worst in baseball. So this year, he's throwing his slider more than his four-seamer. And the slider has been, again, one of the best pitches in baseball. And because he's using that four-seamer less, he's relying on it less, it's still getting hit kind of hard. Batters are hitting 289 off of it, slugging 400 off of it. Expected batting average and expected slugging is a little bit better than that. Because he's using it less often, it means he's getting hit hard less often. He's still using the changeup and the curveball about as much as he'd used them before, but just going with that slider more often, saying, okay, sometimes it is that simple as my slider's amazing, so I'm going to throw it a whole bunch, and you can't hit it. And if I can locate it where I want to, which he can, then I'm going to be a much better pitcher. So it seems like it might just be as simple as that. Is I have this very good pitch, I'm going to throw it a whole bunch. It's something I think that the Rays do very, very well. If they teach their guys, okay, you got this amazing pitch. People don't normally throw primary curveballs the most, okay, but if your curveball is amazing, you're going to throw it a whole bunch. Oh, you have a splitter that's your best pitch? Well, we're going to make you throw the splitter a crap ton. Oh, you have this other pitch that kind of stinks? Stop throwing the pitch that stinks. Throw the one that's good. And so far, it seems like it might be that simple, but it has led to a lot of success. And is Jon Gray going to have a 2.08 ERA at the end of the season? I don't know. I don't particularly think so, but it doesn't really matter, because he's doing this at a time where the Rangers need him to go on this heater the most. It might only last another couple weeks, another 3-4 starts, but by that time you'll have some more reinforcements in this rotation. The Rangers won't be leaning on him as heavily, but you'll look back at the season. If the Rangers end up making the postseason, if they end up winning the AL West, or if they end up squeaking into one of the wild card spots, you're going to look back on these starts from Jon Gray, this month and a half, maybe 2 month stretch, hoping it's 2 months, hoping it's maybe 3 or the whole season. But you're going to look back on this and think, Jon Gray, if the Rangers don't get to the playoffs, they don't stay above water, they don't stay above the Astros, who are now seeming to figuring some things out. They don't get this early decent start, which the Rangers were really, really hoping for while everyone got healthy. And Jon Gray deserves a whole bunch of credit. And I hope that he continues to get these praises and these flowers, because he's been so dang good. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.